Good day to all the people that are participating today in the Civil Society Summit, which this year invites us to reflect on how to build resilience for a changing civic space. I am Gina Romero, the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Peaceful Assembly and Association, and I am pleased to share this message with you, although of course I would have preferred to be there in the room, sharing and getting to know you. I am invited to introduce the panel that will talk about resilience, and I've been requested to talk about the key challenges that civil society are facing now and in the near future, and also about key opportunities and good examples of resilience. Regarding the trends of challenges, there are mostly four that I can highlight today that are interlinked. The decline of democracy worldwide, heavily marked by the growing authoritarianism and the increase of armed conflicts, the spread of hostile narratives and anti-rights agendas that in many countries take form or are pushed by the adoption of restrictive laws and regulations against collective citizen action, including the association and the use to protest as a tool of express discontent, and the growing restrictions in electoral processes that take an important role, especially this year that has been labeled as the super electoral year. So let me talk briefly about each of those. First, regarding growing the authoritarianism and the spread of hostile narratives and anti-rights agenda, the world is facing a global decline of democracy that comes along with a global rise in propaganda against civil society, social movement, protest, and portraying civil society and activists as spies, as traitors, as terrorists and extremists, as enemies, as threat to security, as threat to the state, traditions and values, among others. Such narratives result in stigmatizing civil society, destroying their reputation, and making a delegitimization in front of the society and currently related defunding of their activities. And all this creates a chilling effect and prompt many civil society activists to withdraw their work. Negative narratives against rights and freedoms are often part of a broader political targeted agenda to limit citizen participation in public issues. Of a particular concern is the targeted attacks, restrictions, and spread of hateful rhetoric toward people and groups who are at particular risk, including LGBTI people, migrants, ethnic and religious minorities, among others. And I am also worrying about the attacks and backslides regarding memory and post-conflict movement, which is something I know is of a special interest of the Balkans. Second, the armed conflicts have significantly impacted the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and of association, not only in the conflict-affected areas where citizens are unable to exercise their freedoms, but also of those joining in solidarity movements that are calling to peace and justice and ceasefire. The global crackdowns on rights and freedoms has been further affected by the global threat of peace and security due to the escalation of conflicts and wars, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the violence now in Gaza, Myanmar, Sudan, and the expand of military coups such as is in West Africa. So these are two interlinked trends that are affecting democracy and of course affecting the narratives that are driving the public talk about activism and civil society, but also are interlinked very closely with the spread of restricting laws and regulation that wants to restrict the legitimate work of civil society and that have proliferated in different contexts. And despite their differences, they have common features. So they are based on broad and ambiguous definitions about topics such as the representation of interest or terrorism or security. Also, they impose restrictions and disseminate harmful narratives. And then the legislative and regulatory framework that restricts the right to freedom of association, reinforce the requirement for authorization of registration, impose unjustified and excessive governmental control, allow for dissolution of NGOs on broad grounds and without guarantees of judicial oversight or even due process, and they impose restriction on fundraising and overburdensome requirements for reporting. Such provisions are included in new laws and regulations concerning NGOs and civil society, or are incorporated in existing strings of legislations through amendments, including in criminal codes, anti-terrorism legislations, and different administrative measures and law. While some of these measures to regulate the NGO sector wants to ensure transparency and address corruption, states are required to take a robust risk-based approach and make sure that all these legislations don't affect civil society and citizens in general. Among the regulations harmful for civil society, foreign agent and foreign influence laws are getting very common. So states justify the adoption of such laws for protecting national sovereignty, but they severely impact the rights of freedom of association and close space. And this is because many of the civil society receiving foreign funding are required to register as foreign agents or foreign representatives, and then face an atmosphere of hostility filled with disinformation and smear campaigns. Between January 2003 and 2023 and 2024, my predecessor, the special rapporteur, led on joint 26 communications of states concerning legislations that are or were undermining and unduly restricting the rights of freedom of peaceful assembly and association, from Angola to Sweden to Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Kyrgyzstan, Sri Lanka, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nicaragua, Russia, China, among others. And also historic strong democracies have also turned to foreign influence registration requirements. And now we are actually studying the European Union Commission Defense of Democracy package for influence registration scheme that is also of the standards needed to guarantee the freedom of association in Europe. Regarding the growing restrictions in the context of elections, in many states, power holders use elections as an opportunity to further restriction to the rights of freedom of assembly and association, and to consolidate power through silence, dissent, and opposition voices, and increase spread of disinformation and misinformation in the electoral process. The growing populism and the hate speech, especially against minorities, LGBTIQ people, and civil society, plus internet shutdowns, crackdown of the opposition, and suppression of the freedom of peaceful assembly and association, are actually attacks on democratic institutions and are undermining the capacity of civil society, the opposition, and other actors to actually thrive in democracy. And regarding all these different trends, the advancement of digital surveillance and all the digital aspects that helps increase the smear campaign, the disinformation campaigns, and so on, are undermining a lot and heavily the capacity of civil society to work, but also the capacity of new narratives to build upon the construction of democracy. Now, about the key opportunities in civil society could grasp and grow, there are several that I can mention. One is that through the work of different actors, including the UN experts and mechanisms and the regional human rights bodies, and also thanks to the dedicating monitoring, litigation, and advocacy of civil society, the global normative framework and standards protecting the rights have been strengthened and expanded. So the rights of freedom of association and assembly has been recognized as essential pillar for democracy, and this helps also to advance in different places and just to counteract the restrictive narratives and the laws that want to restrict the freedom of association. Also, it is very important to recognize that in the international scenario, there has been an advance of promotion and protection of human rights in the context of protest. And in this, I would like to highlight the model protocol for law enforcement that my predecessor, but also UNODC, the High Commission of Human Rights, and other actors created last year to provide important practical guidance and reinforce international standards regarded to the precaution, protection, accountability, and the avoidance of the use of force while promoting negotiation and de-escalating tactics in protests and manifestations. And also I want to highlight the rise in powerful social movements despite the ongoing threats and deepening restrictions. So individuals from across different communities mobilize to defend democracy, resist autocracy, repression and discrimination, and to build peace and ensure democratic and responsive governance institutions. So these social movements have become increasingly active on local, regional, and global level, finding innovative ways to mobilize and evade legal and other restrictions posed by states. And this is very important, especially the crescent and stronger action of the grassroots movements around the world. And the rise in this collective action is no doubt the biggest source of inspiration. There are several examples worldwide on how these actions are ensuring not only the guarantee of rights, but even pushing for the sustainability of our life on the planet. For me, the more inspiring movements are the women's movement, all the work that are advancing in the recognition and guaranteeing of the sexual and reproductive rights. Also the sexual diversity movement that is advancing among other in the despenalization of homosexuality. Also the environmental and indigenous movement that are taking the lead in the protection of sacred resources, including water, food, and the oceans. And the strong youth movement that are in solidarity right now with the Palestinian people, which right now is a sign of strength, courage, resilience, and change. As a specific case, we don't have much time, but I will invite you to search about how the Guatemalan people, including the indigenous nations, protected the elections last year with several days of massive demonstrations, and not only ensured that the results of the electoral process were respected, but are also right now vigilant on the transition and the first months of action of the new government. That is a clear sign of resilience. Again, I am very sorry for not being able to be there with you, but hopefully we can see each other soon. Let me assure you that I will continue the work that my predecessor did regarding the follow-up of issues relevant for Serbian civil society, such as denigrant and stigmatization statements against electoral observers and members of civil society by different of political figures in the country, the impact of laws and regulations such as the ones adopted that wish to be adopted to control money laundering, terrorism, corruption, seasonal or occasional employment, and others, and the exercise force of managing protest. Please do not hesitate in sending me information over mail and participating in the calls for inputs and consultations I will be doing to advance in the study of the trends and creating new standards. Right now, the call for inputs for the report that I will be presenting at the United Nations General Agenda Assembly in October is open. The report will address stigmatizing narratives and its implication of the exercise of the rights of freedom of peaceful assembly and association. All the information is in the webpage of the mandate, so please reach out, stay strong, I am there with you.